This is the cruelest TV show ever made.
How many times do I have to say it? Shut up!
Hello, you gorgeous donuts. For 14 plus years, the show that we're breaking down today exposed people's darkest moments for entertainment. Despite entertaining the entire nation and the live studio audience, the people that went on this show had their lives ruined because they appeared on this. And on one occasion, the show went finally too far where the dark truth behind it was exposed. This show wasn't just some trash TV like everybody thought it was. It was so much worse. It was the Jeremy Kyle Show. And in this video, we're going to have a discussion about what the Jeremy Kyle Show is, what the concept of the show is, the worst scenarios that ever took place on this show, the drastic effect it had on people's lives after appearing on it. We're also going to cover the exact moment the show was cancelled off air, and later on in this video, we're going to cover Jeremy Kyle's recent response to everything that has recently aired this week. And at the end of this video, I'm going to reveal the reason that every single time that I've tried to cover this show, the video has been blocked, because I actually tried to make this video in 2023, and after a week of it being uploaded, it was taken off YouTube. There's so much to go through, so get comfy and let's get into this. So the Jeremy Kyle Show first aired on our screens on the 4th of July 2005. It was initially marketed as a show which is going to deal with conflict resolution, where people can basically come on the show and just kind of solve a little issue they have going on in their lives. However, I feel like the term conflict resolution was dropped very quickly, as you're going to see later on in this video. A lot of people realised that this wasn't the main goal straight away. It was actually just public humiliation of people at 9:25 in the morning. Genuinely, like, if you had a day sick off school, you would stick Jeremy Kyle on and that was your morning sorted, having a cuppa with it. You didn't have to do anything else, man. You were living the dream. Now, as you can probably tell, the Jeremy Kyle Show was hosted by a man called Jeremy Kyle, and he would often kind of try and get a reaction out of the guests. He would often probe them, trying to make them just angry as possible, so it gives him the best content and loads of clips can go viral off it. There was always a live studio audience, and for some reason these people always seemed like really mean, like they'd always just join Jeremy in bullying someone on the stage. But we will get onto that a bit later on. Sticking with Jeremy, this was actually his first role as a presenter on TV. He did have a previous show that was on radio, which was called Jeremy's Confessions, where basically people would ring up, tell him what was going on in their life, what they needed solving, and he would help them, and often it was quite empathetic advice. It was a lot different to what went down on the Jeremy Kyle Show. Because that show was just on radio, I believe that Jeremy didn't really need to drive a huge narrative with it as much as you do on TV for ratings and everything. I imagine on radio it was a lot more relaxed, so he didn't have to push the boat out as much as what he did on TV. Because when the Jeremy Kyle Show actually started airing, the more the episodes went on, the more dramatic it would get. Every single episode followed the same structure. Jeremy would invite the person who rang up to be on the show and solve the problem on stage. We would hear the story from their point of view, and after we would hear the guest speak, Jeremy would then bring the person in question, the person who was the problem in this problem, on stage, and whenever they'd walk on stage, the crowd would literally boo them. It was like you were watching a pantomime, except these people aren't actors. These people are real people trying to sort something out in their real life. It was like watching WWE. It was as if John Cena's just come into the Royal Rumble and everyone's going, fuck off, fuck. Will you fuck off, man? It was mental. Like, I want to know how people actually, like, got into the crowd of Jeremy Kyle. Like, why would you want to do that? Like, why would you want to spend your morning just booing people you don't even know? I will never understand that. Now, just before we get into some of the dark truths behind this show, I actually want to cover some of the wild scenarios that took place on this, as some of them are quite light-hearted and funny, whereas some of them are just absolutely mental. Has my son cut up my sex toy? Well, that's the question we all ask ourselves, isn't it? That's what I'm thinking about every single Monday morning. I'm like, has me son got the scissors again? Right, just cut me rose toy up, has he? What's he like? Honestly, can't take your eyes off him for a second, Tim. Did you cheat with another woman on Coronation Street? Oh! What? This has happened to you as well? I thought I was the only one. Honestly, guys, there's nothing worse than, you know, your partner going down to the cobbles, going into the Rovers, returning, and then just shagging someone. You'll never get over that, honestly. Especially when you've got David Platt laughing at you in the background. Okay, I'm getting too into Coronation Street here. I am a fan and do watch it. My boyfriend thinks I cheated with another man through a letterbox. How would that even, you know, logistically, how would that even happen? Like, is somebody just like that on the other end of the letterbox, and the other person's just like, oh, open the flap, just like, why don't you just open the door? The only reason I can think is maybe you lost the keys, but do you really need to shag that much that you're like, oh, well, we'll just do it through the letterbox? Like, come on. Right, that's for other packages, not the one you've got in your boxers. Oh, God, you've definitely got first class delivery, haven't you? I've never had that before. If my quality in bed was attached to a delivery company, it would definitely be Every, probably. Did my dad have sex on my mum's grave? Like, why? Why would that even be a thing? Like, how would you even discover this? Like, also, imagine, like, you know, your previous partner has died. You hated them that much that you said to your new partner, oh, like, would you mind just one time if we just did it on top of a grave? Like, what? Have I been having sex with my bro? Is everything down to shagging? This one was actually a really sad one. I believe that these two were actually in a relationship, and then they did the DNA test and they realised that they were actually related. And I remember the reaction was actually really, really sad. Like, they were just sitting there, just distraught. Like, obviously you would be, and it was so sad. And you almost felt like bad watching this in the morning. You were like, why am I watching two people who are going through something so real? It was really, really bad. My boyfriend is a woman and my baby is a doll. I mean, the boyfriend being a woman, like, surely, did you not know this going into the relationship? And your baby being a doll, like, again, did you not know? My fiancée has slept with over 100 men, but has she been unfaithful to me? I tell you what, right? Bonnie Blue is so lucky that this show is not about, because I'm telling you, this scenario applies right now. I'll marry you if you prove you only cheated 18 times. Just the 18, just the 18. 17 times, that's fine. 18, you're taking the biscuit now. I turned a blind eye 17 times, I'm putting me foot down the 18th, love. I escaped from prison to be with you, but am I the father of your baby? I mean, I bloody hope so. If I've escaped prison and I'm not the father, where do I go from here? Like, I'm on the run, love. Also, I like that he's like got the lines in his hair. That definitely made him more aerodynamic when he was running away from the prison. Good job you got them put in before. I won't forgive my son for sleeping with my girlfriend. Yep, well, Christmas dinner's gonna be fun this year. Someone different making the stuffing this year. Oh, God, that's awful. I'm losing me mind. When I prove I'm not a thief, will my wife leave my dad for me? What? Sorry, that one's like an inception. When I prove I'm not the thief, will my wife leave my dad for me? Well, how is she your wife if she's sleeping with your dad? I don't understand this. Like, why was that the first thing you'd do if you found out your husband's a thief? You sleep with his dad? I mean, that's just making everything tougher. If anything, you're the thief. You're stealing his dad. Prove I'm a dad, then I'll prove I haven't slept with my mum. That's how it goes. That's how the story goes. If you can give me that DNA test result, I'll prove that I didn't sleep with me mum. Tit for tat. This is a transactional relationship. I would actually want to know prior, like, did you sleep with your mum? Because if you did, I don't even need to do the DNA test. Like, honestly, we can just say that you're not. It's fine. I forced my dad to dig his own grave, but he found treasure. Is he obligated to share it? Probably not. Probably. If you were literally forcing your dad to dig his own grave, which I imagine you later were going to put him in, I feel like he's well within his rights to keep the treasure at that point. That's the universe telling him, look, you've still got a bit of life in the old dog at the minute. Okay, keep going. Oh my God, these just keep getting worse and worse. I hope my husband's girlfriend isn't my boyfriend's sister. Yeah, this one is literally like not even... You know, Tom Hanks could solve this when he was in the Da Vinci Code. You're sleeping with my ex and living with my mum. You've stolen my life. Again, like... all of these scenarios are just so niche, and I don't understand how people even get themselves into these things a lot of the time. Leave your fiancé. He had sex with me in a graveyard. Is this what people are doing these days? Why are people doing it in a graveyard? Is it because everything's dead, they're trying to bring a bit of life to it? It's not a graveyard. Like, imagine, you know, you're just chilling in the dirt, your gravestone there, and someone's just like using it to balance while they're... Nah. Not for me. Where was my boyfriend when he said he was behind the chicken shop? Probably behind the chicken shop. I know you're cheating. Stop blaming the dog. Oh, God, they've found out the mistake. The excuse that everyone uses, just blaming the dog. Your girlfriend comes home, there's another girl in the house, just be like, oh, well, it's not my... The dog must have been sleeping with that. It's not me. Why would I be? It's the bloody dog. You know he's feral. So yeah, I just wanted to read out a couple of the wilder scenarios just for a little bit of comedic relief, because what's to come in this video, you know, is a lot more serious. I feel like I needed to just kind of give you that. And I also want to mention I can't show any footage actually from the show, and we're going to get into that at the end of this video, because this video will get taken down, as I've previously experienced. Now, after they invited every single person that was part of the scenario on stage and they read out the scenario so everyone knows what's going on, they would often go down the route of doing a DNA test result if it was applicable, or they would do a lie detector result, which we're going to discuss how I can't believe that they even did that on the TV show later on. Now, at this point, if you didn't watch this TV show, you're probably thinking, like, why did people go on this show? Like, surely they know they were just going to be, like, get laughed at, not laughed with. Now, a lot of the time with these people, they just needed a DNA test result, which was going to resolve the issue in their life. And if they booked that in a clinic in the UK, it costs around 250 quid, which is a hell of a lot of money to, you know, get a DNA test result. And I know most people in the UK couldn't afford that just out of their pocket, especially not the people that were coming on the Jeremy Kyle show, who often were in vulnerable positions. And this is why I think that the people that were put onto this show were actually handpicked as the most vulnerable people, because it was the people that actually needed help the most that were getting exploited on this show, because the show actually give them the DNA test results for free in exchange for content. So basically their payment for coming on the show was getting a free DNA test result. These people who went on the show didn't think they were going to be embarrassed. I know it, like, looking back, you're like, well, how did you not know? But they just didn't know that they were going to be, like, laughed at, because to them, their problem is, like, really serious to them, so they just expect everyone else treats them seriously. But unfortunately, this show wasn't set up like this. The entire, like, setup of the show wasn't to help these people, in my opinion. Like, why was there a live studio audience? Like, what does that actually do to help the people on stage? It just makes everything a lot more intense. Like, just put yourself in these people's positions. Could you imagine having, like, a real serious feud within the family, especially where DNA test results and lie detector results are involved, and you've got, what, like 150 people, like, booing, laughing, like just, you know, having a reaction live to your issue? It's going to make you, like, more intense, probably say something you regret. Like, it's just going to get you more hyped, and I honestly believe that's why they had the live studio audience. I'll never forget, there was this one episode where this guy was on stage and he was talking about how he was a victim of domestic violence, and the crowd just started laughing, like, while he was, like, opening up, like, as if, like, why, well, you can't go through domestic violence. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, they were almost kind of just disregarding what he'd been through, and I just thought it was such a horrible thing to say, especially, like, this was morning telly. You would think something like this would be, like, after the 9 p.m. threshold. It literally was on at 9 a.m. However, despite this show, in my opinion, you know, using people who are vulnerable for content, it was actually one of the most successful TV shows that has ever came out of the UK. It ran for so many seasons, and because of its success, Jeremy Kyle actually signed a contract to take it over to America. It ran for a total of 300 episodes, 2 seasons. It actually got cancelled halfway through the second season because of poor ratings. Also in America, I believe there is a lot more shows like this, like Jerry Springer Show and Maury, where, like, there's a lot more competition. But even Americans said that Jeremy Kyle, like, went too far with the guests, like, he was too nasty to them. Critics argued the show was exploitative, focusing on conflict and drama rather than providing genuine help to guests, which I honestly agree with. And on that note, I just want to move on to the effect that this show had on the people that went on it, and the wider effect it had on society and on, like, young people growing up. Now, in this era of television, from, like, 2005 all the way up to 2015, people who lived on council estates were often punched down and laughed at a lot within media. 99% of people that went on Jeremy Kyle were from a council estate, so there's a clear market that the producers look to pick from. Other TV shows around that time, like Can't Pay Will Take It Away, even, like, Benefits Britain, like, there was a lot of TV shows that was kind of just made to punch down to these people, which is just really weird. It's so weird watching the full episodes of Jeremy Kyle back, because when I look at it now, at the age I am, Jeremy Kyle really kind of reminds me of Caesar from The Hunger Games, who's the presenter of The Hunger Games in that franchise. It's the exact kind of format. Like, the guests are people that are less fortunate than them. There's a live studio audience where the audience believe that they're better than the guests and laugh at them. Basically just using these people for, you know, the entertainment of everyone else. And again, I'm not trying to say that going on Jeremy Kyle was like going on the Hunger Games, but I'm just saying the similarities within just the kind of views that people had on these people is very similar and very weird. Now, I mentioned this in the video that I did in 2023 about Jeremy Kyle that did get taken down, but Jeremy Kyle's upbringing was very good. His mum worked for the Royal Bank and his dad was the personal Queen Mother's accountant and personal secretary, which, like, that just sounds posh. And it just begs the question, like, this guy, you know, like, growing up in this environment, he also went to private school and all that, and I'm not judging people that, you know, have that life, because that's just the life that's given to them, and, you know, that is completely fine. But I don't believe that this guy, from a young age, his entire goal in life was to help people like the people that appeared on the Jeremy Kyle show. Like, I don't believe that that was his sole purpose in life, was to help these people, basically. In my opinion, I feel like he knew that he could use these people for the benefit of himself and the benefit of just, you know, getting more money, growing his brand, growing his show. Because I can't remember a single episode of the Jeremy Kyle show where the people, you know, were like middle or upper class. And I don't want to, like, you know, deem people into classes, because honestly, I just think that's kind of like rude in itself. But it's just to give like an overall view of this show is why I'm talking like this. What made this show seem even more weird was, like, they would often do like parodies of this show for like comic relief and stuff like that. I remember David Walliams doing one. He did a skit which was like a middle class Jeremy Kyle, and the fact that you would even do a skit of that shows how like little of them people actually went on the show.
Well, every year since I was a toddler, Mummy and Daddy have taken me on holiday to Val d'Isere. Only this year, they've said that they want to go on their own.
Like, now I get people can see this as funny, and, you know, that's understandable. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I don't see the humour in these things, but it is just strange how they're reenacted. Like, real people going on this show to sort out real serious issues in their life, and they're just kind of taking the piss. And I know they're doing it about middle-class people, and it's not, like, you know, punching down, but I'm just trying to say it, like, clearly the people that went on this show just weren't taken seriously. And I definitely think the Jeremy Kyle show was really influential in making people feel a certain way about the type of person that would go on the Jeremy Kyle show. Like, I will never forget this moment, like, for my entire life. I remember being in primary school in year 2, sitting having my packed lunch with someone that was in my class, Andy's little brother, who was in year 1, and I always remember his little brother saying, "Oh, Cam, are you coming to, like, so-and-so's birthday?" The kid that was in my class. And the kid that was in my class went, "Oh no, Cam can't come because of where he lives. Mum and Dad said that he lives on Jeremy Kyle Street." I will never forget that. Like, other people in my class went to this party, but I didn't go because the street that I went on was seen as, like, you know, like it seems stupid to say, but people that would go on Jeremy Kyle, like, I don't understand that, you know? And that has never left me, like, a comment like that, and that comment would never have been made unless the Jeremy Kyle show existed, obviously. And the worst part was, as well, is, like, the person in my class, like, his parents didn't even live in, like, a really posh area. Like, it was a better area than where I lived, but it wasn't even, like, posh. It was just like a new build estate, you know? Like, so strange. Like, I was thinking about that when I was researching this video, and it just made me think, like, fucking hell, this show actually did have such a detrimental effect on how people viewed people that were, I guess, less fortunate than themselves. Not everyone, obviously. Like, I'm not trying to generalize people here. I'm just talking about, you know, a situation that's relevant to my life. Now, talking about the effects of this show, the worst situation that happened because of the Jeremy Kyle show was the death of someone called Steve Diamond. So for people that don't know about Steve was a 63-year-old man that actually appeared on the Jeremy Kyle show. He rang up like 40 or 50 times to try and get on the show to solve an issue that he had going on in his life. Now, his intention of going on the show was to prove to his partner that he didn't actually cheat on her, because he'd been accused of cheating, and he actually, you know, he said that he didn't, and he just loved his partner. And he thought that if he could get on the Jeremy Kyle show and do a lie detector test, it would prove that he didn't cheat on her, and then, you know, them two could live the rest of their lives together. Now, unfortunately, when he went on the show, Jeremy was very, you know, was Jeremy Kyle to him, just kind of being very direct and just kind of, saying names and all of the stuff Jeremy Kyle used to do with the guests that would come on. And even the crowd were like heckling and booing him. And when Steve did the lie detector result, the result actually came back as that he was lying, that, it inferred that he did actually cheat on his partner at the time. Now, obviously, if you don't believe that you have cheated on your partner and the test comes back saying, you're lying about this is going to really take you back, and it's really going to, you rang 40 or 50 times and you thought this show would be your last resort to, fixing your relationship, and then it's just like, kicked you in the teeth with it. This is going to knock you for six, and I can't even imagine how that would feel if you didn't actually cheat on your partner. Genuinely, it would ruin your life. And unfortunately, it's suspected that only 7 days after filming on the Jeremy Kyle show, Steve actually took his own life, which obviously is just a horrific thing. And I can't even imagine the pain that he was going through, the pain that, his family were going through after they heard the news of what Steve had done. Like every single time I've read this article and, just kind of thought about it, it makes us so sad. It's really, really just a horrible situation. Obviously, I don't need to, say this, but for someone to feel like that is their only way out, it's just so overwhelming and just so horrific that somebody, a human being has felt them emotions. He did actually write a note to Jane, who was the partner that he wanted to prove that he didn't cheat on her. And the Daily Mirror actually published what was said on this note. Honestly, I don't really want to read it out because I'll probably cry, and also I don't really feel comfortable, but just to give you an overriding kind of overview of it, he basically was just saying again, look, I didn't do this. What I've been accused of, I really didn't do this. Now, obviously, when the show found out about what Steve had done, they decided never to air the episode, and rightly so. And this was the sole reason why the show was took off air. No more episodes proceeded to be posted after this news was published. And I know this sounds awful, but I'm surprised, the show lasted this long without somebody doing something so fatal because of the effects this show would have had on their lives. You might be thinking, what did Jeremy say initially in the aftermath of all of this going on? Well, I have it here. Jeremy Kyle defended his presenting style during the unbroadcasted episode with Diamond, saying it was direct, but it was empathetic, it was honest. He told Diamond to be a man, grow a pair of balls, and tell her the goddamn truth. Obviously very empathetic there. He said that he was not involved in the selection of guests, and also one of the people working on the show at the time said that it was a standing rule to not allow guests with current depression to take a lie detector test, and they were assessed by the aftercare team. Now, it is important to acknowledge that Steve had a history of mental health issues, and he actually got a letter from his GP which said that he could appear on the show, that he was healthy enough to do it, which I don't even know how, he got granted, that by the GP. Now, obviously, the correlation between Steve appearing on the show and then obviously later taking his own life, people kind of drew a line and thought, was this the reason that, he ended up doing what he did? However, after a large inquest into the situation, Jeremy Kyle was actually cleared of any wrongdoing during all of this. Jeremy Kyle said he'd been exonerated and his name had finally been cleared. There is an absence of reliable evidence that demonstrates that Steve Diamond's appearance on the Jeremy Kyle show probably caused or contributed to his death. Steve Diamond's participation in the show is one of a number of factors, and whilst it is not possible that the manner of his experience added to his distress, it is not probable. Now, make of that what you will. That was what is published. I don't really want to kind of get into, was this the sole reason? I imagine you have your own thoughts on this. Now, later on in this video, we are actually going to react to Jeremy talking about Steve's death in a recent interview he's done this week, which obviously is years after the entire situation occurred. And I do find it really interesting how he's now dealing with it. But before we get on to that, I have scoured Reddit and everything just to, get as much information before recording this video. And I did find this one comment on Reddit that did take us back. And before I read this out, I must say this is obviously alleged. I have no idea if this is real, fact, or just made up. But somebody wrote, did you ever personally know anyone who was on the Jeremy Kyle show? And if so, what was their reason for going on the show? And somebody, again, I have to say alleged because I don't know if this is true, but they said 2 people I went to school with were on an episode over a DNA test. They must have become a couple after we'd left school. And then they go on to say, I don't want to read it out because it's very graphic, but that they ended up, unaliving themselves as well. but this has never been published. So I don't know if, you know, this is just not a known thing or if this is just completely made up, but it's a pretty, you know, harrowing thing to make up, I'm afraid. Apparently this person posted on Facebook stating the editing was so outrageous that it might as well have been totally fictional. I can leave a link to this in the description if anyone wants to check this out for themselves, but honestly, like, it's just really, really disturbing reading through this. This is definitely more of a deeper video, Donuts. I apologise, but I'm just really intrigued, like, the effects this show had, because I used to watch it, like, relentlessly as a child, and, like, I didn't realise the effects of it until I actually got older, like, the effects it had on society. Now, you might be thinking, like, well, if the lie detector test said that Steve was lying, surely, like, there we go, he was lying, like, he took the test, it's failed. This is certainly how the show used to frame it. Like, whenever somebody failed the test, you would often get Jeremy going, well, you've lied on the test. Like, he would often say that, and it was often seen as this lie detector test was, you know, taken as gospel. Really, like, it was like, if you failed that, you're lying. That was the kind of crack on this show. This is just me trying to remember from when I used to watch this, but it was never kind of made clear how accurate this test actually was. Apparently the Jeremy Kyle show did relentlessly say that the test was only 90% accurate, but I just can't remember that ever being discussed. Like, maybe it was on the small print on the show, I just can't remember it. The show claimed their polygraph examinations to be around 90% accurate, which is very high claim for any lie detector testing and not supported by research. Like, even 90%, you know, it's high. I will admit it's a high percentage, but it's still like 10 times out of 100 it's gonna be wrong. So should we really be, like, you know, riding the entire scenario on this being like the make or break of it? Because I knew I was doing this video, I did a little bit of research into lie detector tests, or also known as polygraph tests, and I found that on average there's a 35% error within these tests, which means, like, if you took the lie detector test 100 times, 65 times it would be right and 35 times it would be wrong. That's right, isn't it? If my maths has failed us here, this is going to be embarrassing. Oh no. Oh God. So, like, why are we even doing this? It's only right 65% of the time. That's not good. You wouldn't use that in any other, like, thing of life, would you? Do you know, you're checking if you've got any diseases? Oh, well, this test is right 65% of the time. I don't want that test. By the way, we're just going to check if you're pregnant, but this test only 65% accurate, so who knows if the answer's right. That's the fun of it. Imagine taking this test if you had chlamydia or something. You'd be absolutely fuming. 65%! And because of the situation and the kind of handling of the lie detector test, a couple of the producers of the Jeremy Kyle show actually had to stand in front of a court and just kind of, you know, talk about it. Just before we proceed with the video, Donuts, please do consider pressing the subscribe button. We have loads of videos like this to binge watch when you're bored, and I post very consistently as well, so you've always got something out there, but you won't be able to see them unless you subscribe. So press the button, join the Donuts, would love to have you.
I mean, we could talk to 5 different examiners and get a range of opinions and send them on to you.
I know this is pretty fundamental program. Do you not know what the range is? You don't have that information in your head?
I don't have the information in front of me now.
Like, do you realise how bad that is? That one of the people that was, you know, one of the head people working on the show doesn't even know how accurate the lie detector results are. Like, how? Like, what? Anyone who watched this show knows how they sold this lie detector result. It was the make or break of like every situation it was involved in. It was never like, oh, we've got a lie detector result. It doesn't really matter, like, you know, what the answer comes back with because it's not that reliable. They never said it like that, because if they said it like that, why would you even do the test? Like, this was a fundamental part of the Jeremy Kyle show. They wouldn't even use it because it would just be anticlimactic, you know? Like, it just wouldn't fit the narrative of the show, the storyline. Like, every single time they revealed the result of this test, like, the crowd would go, oh my God, they're so terrible for lying. And then the person was made to believe that they were lying. But another thing with polygraph tests is it just kind of goes off emotion. So if you're feeling nervous when you've taken the test, or, you know, you're having spike in adrenaline, whatever your emotions are, it's going to show a spike which they think is you lying, because, you know, that's how they kind of read it, which is just so stupid because they're not taking in any other variables, and the fact you're in a new setting. You're about to go on stage in front of 150 people. Of course, that your hormones and your emotions are going to be up and down. I'm getting into this. I'm getting fully human now. I remember doing a lie detector video once when I was in a YouTube group, and I always remember one of the questions was like, and this sounds so stupid, but it was like, have you ever wanked over the other members' girlfriends in the group? Like, obviously not. Right, like, who do you think I am? Like, what is this? Now, see, I'm trying to sell this too much now. I'm kind of worrying if you think I'm... oh, God. Someone get a polygraph test. Nah, I'll probably fail it, actually. I didn't, okay? I didn't even know what the girlfriends of the other members in this group looked like at the time, so, like, there's that. However, like, the test came back that when I denied it, that I was lying, so then, obviously, it was saying that I had actually done this. And I remember, like, at the time being like, God, this is, like... being recorded, people are going to think I'm a freak. Like, I genuinely haven't done... I don't even know what they look like. Like, what? And I remember just feeling, like, inside, just, like, really, like, I had anxiety, like, because I knew this wasn't true, but obviously it's a lie detector result. The people, they're famed for being accurate, like, until, obviously, now we know they're not. And obviously, like, that is such a light-hearted one. Like, it's not something which would ruin my life or anything, but it still made me feel kind of down when I went home, and I was like, I can't believe, like, that's going to, you know, people are going to think this about me. So I can't imagine how it would feel if it was actually a serious scenario where it was actually like life or death in your life. You know, it must be one of the worst things to go through because you can't prove it. You can't prove that the test is not accurate because you don't have the information in front of you. Like, you physically can't prove that you're telling the truth. You would feel helpless. And, like, I'm not trying to say this is how Steve felt or, you know, if it was because of the show, but all of these emotions will go through the guests' heads and their hearts. You know, I can really see how people would be affected by this test. And what made matters worse about that, again, like, it doesn't affect us at all now. I can laugh about it now. But it later came out that the producers were actually fiddling with the results. So, like, they were actually deciding what the results would say, obviously for content. And, you know, now we know that it was funny at the time, it's funny now, but I just wanted to bring up, like, the correlation of how I felt to how it must feel to do this in front of the nation. Now, like I've said previously in this video, Jeremy actually did a podcast this week with a guy called Andrew Gold, and I watched the entire thing. It was about an hour long, and I did find it a little bit fascinating.
There was a well-known MP who was running media and culture. Is it Damien Collins? Who made a really big thing about how they were 60% effective. This was a man who, if you look on public record, voted for a bill Theresa May put through years before, saying that they would use lie detectors on sex offenders and terrorists when they come out of prison, and in that information it says that they're 95 and 97% effective. Listen.
I mean, that is a diversion tactic, though, that you're using there. You just didn't answer the question. You're basically throwing someone else under the bus there. Like, who is we don't care about this guy. Like, we're asking, like, about you using it on the show, not what this guy thought about it. That guy may have not have had the relevant information when he first said that statement to what he has when he actually said the statement about the Jeremy Kyle show.
It's a really sad way to end that, and it's a really sad way for that guy's life to end and for his family to have to deal with what they dealt with. And I can't do anything about that. I can only be honest about how it was at the time and what I believe were how it was done, and how it was done as to the best of its ability by some amazing people who worked on the show, really, pal.
That was like the most politician's answer to answering why you used the Jeremy Kyle show and why you kind of, you know, didn't mention the accuracy of it. We just didn't get an answer, basically, and it's very much like a media trained answer, and I guess we'll never really know the exact reason why they did this. Obviously, the reason we can assume is because it was better for content, but obviously, you know, the effects of it being better for content were drastic. Allegedly, of course, I need to say that. Now, before we talk about the exact moment the show was actually cancelled and what happened around that time, one thing I do want to discuss is why did people love this show so much? Because I'm the first person to admit that I used to enjoy watching this show. Like, I'm not trying to act like I was always on this, like, high horse of being like, oh, this is not great. Because there was sometimes I was watching Jeremy Kyle and having an absolute whale of a time as a kid. When I was researching the statistics of this show, it said that per episode, it attracted over 1 million viewers, which for the time that it was airing, like, is wild. Like, most people around that time are at work, or, you know, they're just busy at, like, what, 9, 10, 11 a.m. in the morning. To get 1 million people to sit down and watch this, that's pretty mad. And I think just the general time of when it was aired, there wasn't, like, a lot of other media. For instance, like, YouTube wasn't as big. Like, definitely, like, video essays and stuff like that weren't being made on TV shows. And I know people at the time would have questioned the morality of it. Obviously, I was a child, so probably wouldn't, like, not really me that much. But adults would have questioned the morality of it a lot more around that time. But now, everything is judged a lot harder. And I feel like this is why this show could never exist today, because if this was aired on TV, people straight away would be picking out the bad stuff about it, and rightly so. And when I was sitting down just trying to, like, soul search a little bit into discovering, like, why I actually enjoyed this show, I was trying to find out, like, what is actually this, like, the psyche around what, like, when I was watching this show and the entertainment behind it. And I know everybody would enjoy it for different reasons when it was airing, but I think one of the main things why it attracted such a huge audience is, I know this sounds cruel, but people, for some reason, enjoy watching people who are doing worse than them a lot of the time. People like to laugh at people that are in a worse situation than them, and I know, like, people don't really want to think that that's what they do. I'm not saying everyone wants to do that, but there is a portion of people who just enjoy that, and that is what a lot of TV shows kind of, you know, base their entire structure around. It was very prominent with Britain's Got Talent and X Factor. They would purposely get people in who were terrible, like you know, terrible at their craft or terrible at singing, for everybody to laugh at them and be like, oh my god, they are shocking, why are they even trying? You know, everybody did it. I wonder if people used it as, like, an escapism from their own problems, like, you know, watching other people kind of go through it. It's just very interesting to kind of, you know, understand why this show was so huge. And when I was watching one episode, I just went into the YouTube comments to see, like, what is the overall vibe of people's opinions on this show today, and I found this one that I really wanted to, you know, just read out. I was a young teen when the Jeremy Kyle show started, and I loved it. Loved the drama, loved the way Jeremy dealt with the liars, and watched it every day. The older I got, the more I saw just how toxic and abusive it was, and stopped watching it by the time I was 20. The way Jeremy treated the guests is disgusting, and if he treated people like that out of the studio, he'd probably get a broken nose. Now, I've never seen a comment that is so true. Like, all the replies to this were like, yes, this is 100% it. Like, the way Jeremy Kyle would talk to these people, if this was out in the street and he didn't have a bodyguard, he wouldn't say this whatsoever. Like, he kind of hid behind the fact that he was being honest with them, but a lot of the time he knew that he could say anything and he couldn't be touched, because they had, like, these 7-foot blokes ready to spear the guests if they tried anything. It's almost like the equivalent of leaving a nasty comment on a YouTube video now. You know, you're protected, because if you don't show your face and you have a false name, how can people really find you? It was just basically that method, but in real life. And it did make me consider, like, should this show have ever have aired? Like, should it have even have been a thing in the first place? Obviously, if it wasn't, possibly it could have prevented things that happened in the aftermath of the show. Like, we'll never ever know this. This is just in hindsight. And it also made me consider, like, could this TV show come back today, but with just, like, you know, adaptations to its structure, like, without using the lie detector result as, like, gospel? All of these are questions that I would quite like to hear your answers to in the comments, because this is why I'm doing this video, just to kind of discuss it. I'm not trying to, you know, shit on anything or just kind of, you know, attack. I'd literally just want to open the discussion about this show. I just find it really interesting. A lot of people have brought up, like, the Jeremy Kyle versus Love Island debate, you know, because obviously, unfortunately, people who have appeared on Love Island have later went on to, you know, unalive themselves. However, that show is, you know, bigger than ever. I mean, I haven't watched it this year, so I don't know how it's doing this year, but, you know, the ratings are always through the roof with it. And I do find it an interesting debate, and it definitely is something that should be brought up in conversation. I do think it is different, though, because within Jeremy Kyle, people actually went on the show to solve these problems, and he was having a direct impact on the mental health of these people and the, you know, the solutions and the problems within it. Like, he was directly involved in what was going on. Whereas with Love Island, I don't think it's down to the concept, in my opinion, why these people kind of, you know, have huge mental health problems when they leave the show. I definitely think, in my opinion, it's down to the aftercare not being good enough. I always say I kind of feel sorry for people when they come off Love Island, because like from my own experience with dealing with, getting attention online, like I've been doing this for years, so my growth is gradual, and I've still felt really overwhelmed at times, especially if I get some negative comments. Like in the early days, it was very overwhelming and you have to develop a thick skin over time, whereas with people on Love Island, they've gone from nothing to, really famous in the space of weeks. So theirs isn't gradual, and they don't have like a period of building up this skin. It's just attacks them straight away, and I don't understand how these people actually deal with this mentally. Like, unless you're in that position, you can't understand what these people are actually going through. I'm not saying it's the worst thing in the world, but it's such a strange feeling. Imagine just all these people having such negative things to say about you, when before you didn't even have one person saying anything bad about you. It's one of those things that unless you've been in that position, you can't understand how that person's going to feel. But again, I think it's interesting how, the discussion of cancelling Love Island has never, ever, ever been brought up, like ever. Obviously, people online have said it, and, the media has kind of alluded to it, but within, like, the network, it just seems to be going from strength to strength, that show. Now, talking about cancellations, like I mentioned earlier, the Jeremy Kyle show was actually pulled from television after the Steve Diamond episode was, filmed, and unfortunately what happened after. Its last episode aired on the 10th of May 2019, and after this, Jeremy Kyle kind of just disappeared from TV for quite a large time. He talked on various podcasts saying that he went through a really tough period, that he couldn't even get out of bed, and that his wife had to drag him to a GP because she was worried about his health. Now, obviously, people are going to have very little sympathy for him, during this time, and rightly so. Like, someone's literally lost their life, and even though the show's been cleared from any wrongdoing, people aren't going to feel sorry for Jeremy Kyle. That's just the crack here. In one interview, he did actually say that one of the biggest stresses at the time was he felt really bad because the people that worked on the show, they weren't going to be able to pay their bills and mortgages because the show had just been cut off like that, and they'd lost their jobs overnight. So he, like, in this interview, he was very much given the impression that he really loved the people that worked there, and that, like, they loved him and it was a great team. Yeah, I've seen, like, various articles and various interviews from people that worked on the Jeremy Kyle show that said a little bit different, and I guess this is just down to opinion.
My job was to find people to go on it and convince them to go on it. It was like a sales job, really. All the time, everyone's like, "Oh, the guys, you can't trust them. You got to do this. You can't trust them. You can't trust them. They're bad people." And you believe it, so you're like, "Oh yeah, it's us against them." If I got offered now a year in prison or a year work on Jeremy Kyle, I'd choose prison.
So, that seems like a happy environment to work in. Bloody hell. Now, I don't know if this guy's opinion represents everyone that worked on the Jeremy Kyle show. I don't want to say that, but clearly he didn't really find it, that fulfilling. I do find it interesting that he said that people, the people that worked there were brainwashed into thinking the people that were coming on the show were all terrible people, and it was like, the goal was to kind of embarrass these people. Because for me, like, obviously, the people that went on Jeremy Kyle show, they would just be people that I would live around when I was younger. Like, that's just how I grew up. From my perspective, I just can't understand how you would think that every single person coming on the show is a bad person. However, if you, like, have not grew up around people like this, I can see how you could probably fall into, thinking that these people are all bad if you're told they're all bad because you have no experience, dealing with these kind of people, I guess. What I'm trying to say is, like, I don't necessarily think you're bad that you've been brainwashed into this. I can see how you can have this perspective. I honestly can. Doesn't make it right, but I'm just trying to say I understand it from his point of view. But it does say straight away that even before these people have got on stage, there's already a narrative and a storyline in place that they have to stick to. It's not like, let's just get everyone on stage and kind of, just work this out whilst we hear what they have to say. They already know what is going to go down before these people even get on the stage, really. At least that's just my opinion. There was also a runner who worked on the show who did an anonymous interview with the BBC and talked about their experience of working on the Jeremy Kyle show. This person said that producers and researchers would be talking to guests for hours before the show began, passing information across. I heard them saying things like, "You won't believe what I've just heard your fella say to me just now." On one occasion, I was in the dressing room and overheard a producer tell a guest that their girlfriend had called them a slag. This was normal. You didn't even question it. What is happening here is vulnerable people who are appearing on this show are getting riled up. Just absolute. It's almost like you've got a bull. You just poke on the bull, right? Just trying to slap it, and then you're going, "Go on. going like, and there you go, perform, just riling people up. So when they go, like, no wonder some people on this show genuinely, like, if you watch some of the episodes, when they come out like this, fucking ready to just go. It's probably because they're getting told, like, yeah, he's just called you a fucking slag, he's called you a slag. No wonder they're walking out as if they're jumping into a Royal Rumble. Because these situations are so real and they've taken over their lives, and now there's a studio audience, they've just took a lie detector. Their emotions are going to be through the roof, and they're just heightening them even more. It's just manipulating people. This is what this is. I once heard a producer tell a guest, we don't want you to be violent, but you do whatever you need to do out there. Again, that is a manipulative language saying, look, we don't want you to be violent. So basically, even saying the word violent, that's the last thing that sticks in their head before they go on. So it's just manipulative language. It is, because you don't even need to say that. You could just say, oh yeah, just like act how you would act normally, but that doesn't, hit the same. Saying the word violent, they know exactly what it's very specific language they're using here. Now, I did say we're going to cover Jeremy's response to everything that has recently happened in an interview in a podcast this week that he's done. There's a segment in this podcast where Jeremy reacts to Steve's death.
Moment you found out that Steve Diamond had taken his life after going on your show, how did that hit you?
Massively, because, I can't imagine being in a position like that where there's no way out. And for him, that was his reality. And for then his family, that was an awful thing to deal with. So your first thoughts are absolutely about that guy. I could see entirely very quickly what was going to happen.
Now, I do believe he is being sincere here. And obviously this is years after, where, he's been able to process how he feels about this. And obviously, like, how he feels isn't the main thing here. It's obviously Steve's family and Steve. But I do like that he is talking about it and not just hiding and just not putting statements out there, because, this should be discussed and this person shouldn't be forgotten.
The coroner quite rightly cleared me and the Jeremy Kyle show, and Steve Diamond obviously had problems. And of course, people will say, well, should he have come on? And we will tell everybody that's out there that it was turned down to come on, and went back to his GP and rang the show 50 times, and the GP wrote a letter and all that. So I get what people would think, some people, but the show did everything the show should do.
Now, I just kind of want to leave that up to you to just kind of assess what you just said there. The show and Tim were cleared, so I guess it's just down to basically opinion, really. Jeremy also discussed, does he think the show will ever be brought back to air?
Do you think Jeremy Kyle will be back, the Jeremy Kyle show?
No, never. Not in this world. I spent 6 years trying to find closure for everybody and not being able to think about it. And now, stuff like this, I would never have done this. That's the other thing. I would never have done anything where out of that bubble, because that bubble was a bubble.
And I kind of agree with that. I just think, this show, the way it was done back then could never exist today. The clips would go viral on TikTok, but it just wouldn't be received well, in my opinion. Now, I hope you've enjoyed my kind of breakdown of this show. Like I've said previously, I find this really interesting, and when I've tried to break down this show previously in 2023, I actually uploaded a video talking about the information that was available then, and the people who produced the Jeremy Kyle show, I believe it was ITV, took down my video, and they also manually went onto my Reacts channel, and I'd done 2 or 3 reactions to the worst scenarios on the Jeremy Kyle show. They'd actually blocked those videos as well. Now, within the YouTube copyright system, if they believe footage is not fair use, they can copyright it, which means that they take all of the money from the video. I've got loads of videos like that where it's fair as long as as long as you can watch them. I don't mind, as long as it doesn't happen to every single video and I can't make a living. But to block it is an abuse of fair use, because whenever I do videos, I always make sure they're fair use. That I speak for most of the video. The footage is not really the main thing. It's not just me just well, the footage is on the entire video, And I found that really interesting, because it wasn't an automatic thing. They actually found my other channel and went onto there as well. And I just thought, that is so strange. And it's very clear in 2023, they were trying to hide, all evidence of what was going on in this show. And I wonder if it was because the case was kind of going on and everything was very heightened at that time. However, as of today, it seems like it's now a lot more relaxed and they're happy with the footage kind of being out there. Obviously, Jeremy Jeremy's doing a lot of podcasts and interviews talking about it. And if you just type in Jeremy Kyle's full episodes on YouTube, there's like actual full episodes, like 4 months ago, 354,000 views. Like they blow up, like just full episodes, no reactions. Whereas when I tried to cover this show, there was nothing, not a single thing, which I do just find interesting how the landscape of, the footage being out there has changed. I wonder if they're just letting these videos go to test the waters to see how the public reacts to them. I have no idea. I just find it interesting, if I'm being honest. But yeah, Donuts, thank you very much for dedicating the time to watch this video. Let me know what you think of the Jeremy Kyle show. Would you want this to come back? Hopefully you don't think I've been too biased in here. I've just tried to collect all the information and just kind of cover it as best as I could and just try and be empathetic when I could, because this was a very deep video, a lot deeper than other videos. If you do want to watch a video from me that's a little bit more lighthearted, got more funnier moments in it, click this video right here. We've got so many videos reacting and breaking down British TV shows, so go on a binge watch if you want. That's your night sorted. And again, thanks Donuts, I really appreciate you watching. Okay.